And a couple of weeks ago, I came across an organisation called Res Artis. They were advertising for a part-time PR person. But when I investigated them, I discovered that they were founded over 30 years ago in Germany. They became a formal organisation 20 years ago in Holland. But here is the surprise. Their present head office is in the inner Melbourne suburb of Collingwood. And the Executive Director, Eliza Dawson's on the phone. Eliza Dawson, thanks for speaking to Arts Alive.
Thanks for having me, Vincent, and it's great to be with you and your listeners.
It was quite a discovery to come across your organisation, which, as I understand, started really as a volunteer organisation to be an informal network representing residential art centres and residency programs. Is that still its core business?
That's right, yeah. So we were conceived in Greece in 1992, as you said, and born in Germany the following year. And really we were an informal network that we saw was very appropriate at the time as the residency sector was gaining momentum. Res Artis means for the arts in Latin. And we first launched our office in Berlin in 1993. In 2003, we registered in the Netherlands, and I was appointed as the inaugural executive director at the end of 2016, and that's when we launched a satellite exhibition and office space here in Collingwood. Of course, COVID hit and everything changed the world, including arts residencies, which were very heavily impacted by our very nature of, facilitating international exchange. And that's when we made the decision to close the Dutch Foundation and create our Australian office as the international headquarters. So it's really an amazing asset for Australia for us to be here.
I suppose an organisation like that really does need modern technology to function internationally then. So it's been really synchronous with the growth in the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the field of arts residencies, they date right back to, I guess, the earliest sort of type of residencies were right back to the 16th century when arts academies began to emerge in Europe, and this idea of, a dedicated site for artists to advance their practice emerged. And then in the 70s and 80s, easily accessible travel came about, and residencies as we know them today were born. And it's really been in the late 80s and 90s and into the 2000s with the development of internet that things have absolutely skyrocketed. And it has been interesting, of course, with the COVID pandemic to look at the effect of the internet on the field. I think one of the things for me that I love most about arts residencies is the way they are shaped by external factors. So the COVID pandemic being one of them. And obviously during that time when the world ground to a halt and international travel wasn't possible, Res Artis as the peak international body for the field of arts residencies very heavily advocated for our members and for other arts residency operators to take on board these digital models of arts residencies, and never, saying that was going to replace in-person travel, because we still believe that's the best route. But, at that time, it was important that the field was able to sustain and continue. And I'm pleased to say that since the pandemic has, certainly not gone, but dwindled down, some of that online activity has remained and is seen to be complementary to the in-person experience.
How widely does the Foundation define the arts for the purposes of residencies? Because I saw one residency when I was flipping through your website for a non-biodegradable waste challenge. That sounds more science than arts, although perhaps there's an art in achieving those outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you hit the nail on the end there. The field of arts residencies is so incredibly diverse in terms of scale and models. So within our membership, which I guess you can see is a bit of a microcosm of the broader industry, we've got 650 members across 80 countries, and that ranges from, somewhere like a small artist-led grassroots based in Cambodia right through to the Victorian Albert Museum in London. So very, very broad, and they are quite hard to define because of that. But for me, I always like to link residencies back to their lexical meaning, so to reside in a place. So it's not really this sort of fly in, fly out tourist experience. It's really about that person, engaging and embedding in their location and being stimulated by new surroundings and experiences and connecting very deeply with communities.
So it's essentially like a clearinghouse for almost any residency worthy of the name.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, as you said, it can open up to non-art sectors as well. So, and this is a relatively recent event, so obviously all the different arts disciplines and increasingly a lot of art centres are looking at interdisciplinary models because artists are blurring those boundaries, but also crossing over into science and various things. So you mentioned an example before, and another one I can give you is one of our members, Academy Schloss Solitude in Stuttgart in Germany, who have a relationship with Bosch, and so the artists will work with innovators and designers and scientists there to look at sort of shared issues and problem solve and look at creative and lateral thinking.
Well, Eliza, you said there are 80 countries represented. What are some of the more notable small countries which we perhaps rarely ever hear about as being active participants in the arts? And are their focuses essentially on their own arts and craft, or are they opening up their culture to the world?
Well, I guess it's a combination of both in response to the second part of your question first. So I think the ideal residency is mutually beneficial. So for the artists themselves, it can literally be transformative and life-changing experiences. I get that feedback from artists all the time. So it might open up international markets or build professional development and career pathways. Certainly that time and space away enables experimentation and aids the creative process. And they're really seen as crucial to the arts ecosystem now. So if artists are applying for grants or awards or things like that, then often the selection panel will look through their CV and make sure that there's residency experience, and particularly international residency experience is sought after. But on the flip side, the communities who are engaging with those artists in whatever region they may be are learning. So there's sort of intercultural understanding, of course, and I think there's really no better way of doing that. This is on a people-to-people level. So really, arts residencies can be seen as sort of enablers of soft diplomacy. And there's also just the skill sharing and the very way artists go into a place and sometimes pick up on highlights of a region that locals might not have thought was important or unique, and bring that to the forefront, and then that might in turn, change that community and even generate income and revenue. I have seen examples of that as well.
Yes, indeed, arts practices are a way of seeing the world in some respects. You're listening to Arts Alive, and we're speaking with Eliza Dawson, the Executive Director of Res Artis, an organisation representing residential art centres and residency programs worldwide, and based in Collingwood. We'll be back after this track with more conversation with Eliza. You're listening to Arts Alive, and Eliza Dawson is our guest. She's the Executive Director of Res Artis. Eliza, you've mentioned the 80 countries. What kind of language challenges are there for people taking up programs? One of the few downsides of growing up in Australia is relatively little pressure to learn a foreign language. So do, for example, Australian artists embrace the opportunity of a residency which involves, in a sense, having to learn a foreign language?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly seen examples of that, and artists might be better equipped to deal with residencies if they put in that effort. But I think nowadays, for the arts residency operators who are working in the field and opening up their spaces to international artists, Most of them will ensure that they have English language skills, I guess is the universal language. But of course it is, not necessary, but I think very nice if the artist can make an effort and at least learn, a few words. And arts residencies can really range from a very short period of time. It could even be a couple of weeks, which is more and more common these days. It's this sort of fast-paced, busy world everyone's operating in, right through to a year or even 2 years. So obviously the longer the residency period, the more scope there is for that sort of deeper intercultural experience.
Yes, I've met several artists when I was in Berlin who were on residencies, and they were all busily learning to speak German. So I think it's a broadening just not of artistic possibilities, but also of linguistic opportunities as well. But you mentioned you're a membership organisation. Talk about the membership structure. Obviously enough, things like residential art centres and residency programs would be members, but how about artists, members of the public indeed? Talk a bit about membership of Res Artis.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, we are a membership organisation. Mostly our members are arts centres who run arts residency programs. And as mentioned, we've got 650 members across 80 countries around the globe. We do also have a small number of individual members, so they might be artists or curators, researchers, that sort of thing, and associate members who are more people like national funding bodies or international cultural councils. And I think, our membership is very reflective of the broader international arts residency field. It is a vetted network, and when I say that, we don't sort of look at every detail of each residency, but we do ask our residencies to adhere to a shared set of values that the staff and board operate by as well. So they are professionalism, diversity, transparency and sustainability. And really we see our role as supporting the amazing work of our members, the arts residency programs who offer residency opportunities. And to do that, we provide them with online and offline tools for professional development and capacity building. And of course, everything we do is really for the benefit of artists. So artists can come to our website, resartis.org, and search freely for residency opportunities. So they can look at a section that we call open calls, which is exactly what it sounds when arts residencies have open calls for applications, or they can browse the profiles of our members, and they can do so with search parameters. So they might say, I'm a ceramic artist and I'm interested in going to South America, or even narrowing it down to Colombia and I'm travelling with my family, or these types of search parameters, and pop that into our database, and that brings up opportunities for them.
And that's accessible to anyone who looks onto your website then? You don't have to be a member then?
Exactly, yeah, that's right. So any artists out there who are keen to experience the world of arts residencies, it's really the number one place to go, and we get that feedback all the time. And I think a lot of artists do come to the Res Artis website knowing that they're going to get a good experience, because we do have that vetted system in place.
Take us a little bit further through the process that once having established a number of possible residencies, how does the artist or the art worker proceed?
Yeah, so we're not involved in the application process directly, so we're kind of, I guess, the middleman in the operation. So we promote the work of the arts residency members, but all applications go directly through them. So on our website, if they're looking at a profile of an arts residency member of ours, they've got all the information in front of them in terms of a breakdown of the space and the facilities that are there, the accommodation set up. We ask information about whether they provide grants, or on the other side, if they charge fees to the artists to participate in their programs. And then there's also a link to their website or to their open call for applications, which directs the artists on how to apply.
Now, your 2022 conference, I think, was planned for Kyiv in the Ukraine, but was cancelled. And this year's conference is being held in Taipei, the capital of Taiwan, a disputed island in Asia. That suggests that you have to occasionally be very careful diplomatically with the operation of the organisation.
Yeah, look, these two opportunities actually just came to us randomly. So the way our conferences work is that we usually we don't even have to put out a call out. Our members get in touch with us expressing interest to host a conference. And so you mentioned the first one that was planned for Ukraine. And so we were steadily working towards that conference, and then which was due to be held in 2022. And then, sadly, the Russian invasion took place, and we had to cancel that in-person experience. And I think we felt very compelled to assist where possible, and so we saw the role of Res Artis to, I guess, try and generate support for Ukrainian arts and cultural professionals who were in need. And we put out a call to our members to consider developing emergency or humanitarian arts residencies. And they did take up that call, and that's something that we have provided resources for, not only for Ukrainians, but of course recognising that there's creatives at risk all around the world. So that's, the type of initiatives that Res Artis advocates and works towards. As you say, we do have, after having a successful conference in London last year, and we've actually had over time, Vincent, I think more than 32 conferences in 24 countries since we've been operating. We've got our conference called Interweave the Spectrum Beyond Collaboration. That's coming up from the 6th to the 9th of September this year in Taipei, and that focuses on the trends and challenges of collaboration and includes, I guess, some of these topics we're discussing today. So things like cross-disciplinary models, social engagement, capacity building and evaluation too.
So they're more of an academic nature rather than being something like APAX, the Australian Performing Arts Exchange, where everyone is advertising their wares and looking for bookings.
Well, I guess it's a combination of both. So because our membership is so diverse, once again, we've got people attending our conferences who are just sort of considering setting up an arts residency, or they might be artists who are very interested in residency experiences. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we've got members who've been operating for as long as we have, if not longer, who are really looking to grow their program, whether through research or partnerships or whatever it might be. So we have to sort of cater to both ends of the spectrum. And so we try and make our conferences as appealing and as diverse as possible in terms of speaker lineup, content, and diverse formats as well. So there will be, I guess, more academic discussions in terms of keynotes and various things like that. But then we also offer a lot of practical workshops, both for artists and for arts residencies, to, as professional development or capacity building opportunities for them.
Well, if you're interested in finding out more about Res Art, their website is very easy to remember. It's resartis.org, and the conference coming up in 2024 in September is in Taiwan, and you can go and investigate on the website all sorts of interesting things, lists and lists and lists of available residencies, and also a short documentary about the organisation's history. And Eliza Dawson is the Executive Director, now based in Collingwood in Melbourne, and I thank you very much for speaking with Arts Alive.
Thank you so much for having me, Vincent, and thanks to your viewers for your interest in the incredible world of arts residencies.